So I'm finally getting around to recording this video. It's been about a month since I did a kind of sloppy unboxing video of this, and I've been meaning to get around to doing a review video on it for a couple of weeks now. But I have to say, kudos to other YouTubers who find the time to consistently create content and make videos, especially those who also have full-time jobs and families. I have to say, I don't know how you guys do it. That being said, uh, I have carried this quite a bit actually over the past month, and I want to share my thoughts on it. So when I did my unboxing video, it was a little bit, I don't know, like I said, it was sloppy. I wasn't really too prepared for it, and so I didn't really get to speak to the features of this knife all that much, but I will get to them now. So this is the Winterblades Severn. This is a model that came out quite a while back, actually. I think it was like late last year, but I was not able to get in on the orders at the time, so I got part of the second batch, which started shipping, I think, over the summer. I got mine in the beginning of October, I think, or the end of September. And as far as I know, these are sold out again, and I don't really know if they're going to be doing another batch of these. I haven't checked the website in a bit, but hopefully those of you who are interested in these are able to get one. So this unique looking knife has a 3¼ inch blade of M390 in, I guess you'd call this like a Wharncliffe style. There is a little bit of a curvature to the blade, but not much. But obviously the tip is way down here, so this is something you'd be using more for like cutting on a table, more than like a piercing cut. And it's got this, they call it a laser bacon finish on it. So as far as I can tell, they're putting on like a black PVD coating. It's not a DLC as far as I know, it's just a regular PVD. And then they are, I think, lasering in these lines, this pattern. And that same pattern is actually carried over to the pocket clip. Blade steel's M390, which for something at this price point you would expect. And the handle is green anodized titanium. The handle itself is a little bit less noteworthy than the blade, aside from the fact that it's just really nicely done. You can see it's got a bead blast finish with a green anodize, and green is definitely a difficult color to achieve consistently with anodizing. I know from experience, I used to do a little bit of anodizing myself. And you also have black hardware, probably also a PVD, black PVD. And the same thing on the hardware here in the lock, not on the top, but on this little piece that you can actually interface with. And part of the reason I know for sure it's not a DLC is you can actually see on the tip here that the finish is actually worn off, and that's really just been from like putting it down on tables like that. So it didn't take much for that to wear off. It doesn't bother me too much though. So anyway, really gorgeous anodizing. The color really pops. I hope that the camera picks it up well. I actually showed this to a friend of mine, and that was the first thing he said about it. It's like, wow, look at the color. And I agree. So they did do this in different finishes. I think they did a raw titanium, and I think they did like a pink or a purple kind of anodize as well. But this is the one that was most attractive to me. So like I said, it's a 3¼ inch blade. Overall, it's 7¾ I think. So this is a pretty medium-sized knife. It feels full size though, because it is fairly tall, and the blade is fairly tall in this dimension. So in the hand, it does not really feel like a medium. It feels more like a large-sized knife, despite the fact that lengthwise, it's more of like what I would consider a medium-sized knife. And so for comparison there, we'll take out, I guess, what most people are familiar with, the PM2. So the PM2 is a little longer in the blade, 3¼ versus I think just under 3½. Although obviously the PM2 has a longer handle. Taking a look at them closed, So you can see that they're similar kind of in height, so they'll kind of carry similarly in the pocket, but again, the Severn is a little shorter. And so for comparing to kind of a smaller EDC knife, so here's a CJRB Feldspar, the 3-inch. So you can see this is significantly smaller. And in terms of the blade length, again, you can see that this is a significantly shorter blade. Not by like a ton, but a 3-inch blade versus 3 1/4. So, yeah, pretty medium-sized knife. Ergonomics on this thing, I think they're just kind of okay. There's nothing really special about it. You can see it's kind of a rectangular shaped handle. It's neither exceptionally comfortable nor is it uncomfortable. It gets the job done. And the blade, you know, it's nice and sharp out of box. Best Tech, who is the manufacturer here, tends to put pretty good factory edges on their knives. I have not felt the need to, you know, put my own edge on it immediately like I do in some other cases. I have used it just a tiny little bit. It does cut really nicely, but I can't really say much about edge retention, although obviously M390 does hold an edge pretty well, so I'm sure that this would be no exception there. So let's get on to what really makes this unique. So aside from the visual effect of that finish on the blade and the nice popping green anodized color, Winterblades are known for their unique designs in terms of the mechanisms, the locks, and the incorporation of actually magnets, which is something that we don't really see anywhere else. They had done some previous models, and they actually have some newer models, and I don't know a lot about them because I don't own them and I haven't handled them, but I knew that they have incorporated magnets into the locking mechanism, into the detent, and also being used to open the blade, to actuate it. In this case, the magnet's used a little bit more in a subtle way. It's actually used in the thumb stud. So if you look closely, you notice that the thumb stud is only on one side, but this is actually a magnetic thumb stud. It's actually held in place via magnetism. So if you want to, and I'm not going to, because I am a righty, but you can, with some significant effort, you can actually remove this thumb stud. It doesn't screw out, I think it just pulls out, and then you can just pop it in the other side and use it as a lefty, which works well because this is an ambidextrous knife. You'll see that the lock, which is the other unique feature of this, and I'll get into that in a minute, is ambidextrous, and the pocket clip appears to be reversible. So this is something that would be recommendable for both righties and lefties. So let's take a look at the lock. So at first glance, it looks like a crossbar lock, and it does actually operate in that way as well. So you pull back on the, I'm not going to say crossbar because that's not what we have here, but you pull back on this, it disengages the blade. And there you go. So it operates just like any, you know, crossbar or quote-unquote axis lock. But you notice on the top here, you have this whole sliding piece that moves when you pull back on that. So this whole sliding piece on top is actually a spring-loaded piece. Obviously, it doesn't make it move. But this actually operates more like something like the, I guess, Shark Lock or Super Lock. The Shark Lock being from Demco Knives, and Super Lock, I think, being designed by Snex Tan, and it's used on a few different models now. And you can actually actuate it the same way too. This little piece up here, which doesn't stick up very much if you look at it from the side, actually does hinge. So you can kind of catch it with your fingertip, and there is texturing on it to help you grab it. And it actually rotates up, so you can get a better purchase as you pull back. So you can actually operate this the same way that you would operate a Demco Shark Lock or a Super Lock. So you actually have two modes of operating the lock. You can either operate it like a crossbar lock, or you can operate it like a Shark Lock, and that's cool. Now, I think because of the way that this is designed, it would also have a lock strength similar to something like a shark lock. It's not just relying on a bar in here, and it's a little difficult to see inside, but this should be a pretty strong lock. And one of the things that's really cool about it, aside from the fact that it's unique and you're not going to see it anywhere else, is it's actually very fidgety. Now, it's a little difficult for me to show how fidgety it is because of the way that I have my camera set up here. I'm actually very close to the knife, only a few inches away from my phone. And just out of view here is actually part of the stand I'm using for holding the phone. So I can't really swing it around too much without hitting something. But it pops open very easily with the thumb stud. It also opens very easily using the cutout. It finger flicks open, spidey flick, with that cutout very easily. But you can also pull back on the lock and swing it open. Like I said, I don't want to smack something while I'm doing it, but trust me, it works. And again, I'm sure there's also a ton of other YouTube videos out there demonstrating that. And same thing when you're closing it. It will just swing or drop shut as soon as you disengage that lock. So it's a very fidgety knife. And the action is actually very pleasant. It's extremely smooth. You really feel like no friction when you're opening it. People use terms like buttery or hydraulic, but it really does kind of have that quality. And it also has this really kind of cool sounding noise when it deploys. It's kind of more of a high-pitched click that you don't really hear in a regular kind of, I guess, crossbar lock or shark lock. So it is a fun fidgety knife, and functionally it works well too. Again, I typically kind of prefer a drop point or clip point. I prefer a center point tip because the way that I tend to use knives, and also I guess aesthetically I prefer, I like something that's better for piercing. Like, I think the standard kind of task that I would describe as like an EDC use for me would be like cutting open a bag of dog food, right? I would not put it down on the table and use the tip to open it this way. I would kind of hold it in my hand, pierce into the bag, and then go across this way. And this would work fine for that, but something with like a pointier tip like the PM2 I just showed kind of would work better for that kind of piercing motion and then pulling across for a cut. So, that's just personal preference for me, so I can't like knock the knife for, not being my favorite just in terms of things like personal preference. But and aside, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that despite the fact that this thing is kind of like unique and different and funky, and it also still works as a functional tool. And I always love it when you can get something like this that manages to be unique, engineered in a different way, but doesn't give up anything in terms of its functionality or practicality. So it scores very high points for that. That being said, this is not really going to be one of my personal favorites, just because of those same reasons. I like everybody else, I have my personal preferences when it does come to things like shape and ergonomics. This does not kind of fit into that kind of realm of my favorite when it comes to those things, but I really, really like it for the unique features on it, and also just the impeccable build quality. I have to say I've been kind of like increasingly impressed with Bestech manufacturing. I do have a few other knives that I've shown on the channel that have basically all come to me like perfect. Anything that I could flaw in them would be more on the design side, and they're kind of more, not really even flaws, they're more like preferences. So example, what's the name of the model? The Sambac that I did a video on previously. Flawless in terms of the fit and finish, but there are little things about it I don't like the fact that the blade has a recurve, which is not my favorite. So this is kind of like that. I can't really fault it in terms of the design or fit and finish, but it's not my favorite in terms of the overall kind of shape and aesthetic. I did point out that the pocket clip earlier does match the finish on the blade, and it does work well as you know, as well. Machined clip goes in and out of the pocket just fine. Nothing particularly noteworthy about it, but I do appreciate the fact that it is reversible, and I don't usually like pocket clips that are asymmetrical or like they kind of curve or something. I like pocket clips that are kind of just straight like this. Again, personal preference. I guess another comment I would have is that, I mean, the handle is bead blasted, and the finish is really, really nice. And the bead blast does give actually a nice, pleasant texture where it feels kind of almost like velvety. It gives like a little bit of grip, but I tend not to like bead blasting on, I guess, knives that are meant to look good or be pretty, because bead blasting is kind of prone to, you know, rubbing off. Those of you who like own a Sebenza or an Umnumzan or another Chris Reeve knife will know that, you know, along the corners and stuff over time, you know, that finish will kind of wear off, and you'll get kind of patches of different colors. And I think that on certain things that's fine, but when you have something with this nice bright ano, that could look ugly over time if you're not really nice to the knife. If you're beating the hell out of it, something like this, you know, the handle may start to wear and not look great. If you're a collector, you may care about that, but if you're buying this as a hard use knife, then you may be disappointed that that finish you know, wears off. I have to say that I haven't really mentioned it, but you know, they do have the name of the model here, the Severn, printed on here. I think it looks a little bit tacky personally. I actually don't see anywhere on here where it says Winterblades on it. I know I've pointed out in previous videos that I like it when branding is kind of subtle. I appreciate how brands like keep branding to a minimum on the knife. They typically put their logos somewhere, like they'll machine it in kind of subtly on the handle or on the clip or in the pivot. I don't really love this. It looks, yeah, it's a little gaudy for me, but that is really kind of a nitpick. Anyway, so I don't know if I have much else to say about it. Definitely recommendable. For those of you that want to get one and haven't been able to, I really hope that they do more of these in the future so you can. But again, I know that they've also released newer models recently, so they may be focusing more on getting those into the hands of people in the future. But before I end the video, I think I'm just going to do some close-ups here so people can get a good look at it. So again, there is the finish on the blade, pretty different and unique. Edge looks pretty neat. Bevel is relatively even and consistent. You can see the chamfering that they've done around the edge of the handle here. You can actually see the spring, I think, a little bit. Yeah, there's the spring for the lock in there. I don't think I mentioned it, but I believe this does run on caged ceramic bearings, like all of the other Bestechs that I have handled. Back spacer. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching.